So I'm very glad to be here to talk about planetary health, a very important term of like an emergent science that is really important for the sustainability of this planet. So today is a really important event where we are celebrating the accomplishments, the potentials, and the promises of science and technology, which are definitely very well worth celebrating because of science and technology, particularly in biomedical, chemical, and health science field. Our life expectancy have been really dramatically increasing over the past 50 years or so. Child mortality has been decreasing thanks to a lot of the health science research that have been done and practiced in the field, and poverty rates has also been decreasing over time. But the picture is not all rosy. All right, because like coming along with the big science and technology progress that we have and improvement in livelihood and living standard actually come at a cost. And the cost is first and foremost on our planet. We are really putting, in order to make all of these accomplishments, we have really exploited the planet at a really unprecedented rate. For instance, we're putting so much CO2 in the atmosphere right now. Okay, so right now we are at a level that is like the highest for the past a few 100,000 years. We are really at quite a warm planet right now. And we have been acidifying the ocean, and major marine ecosystems are actually collapsing all over the world right now. We are increasing energy use, we are destroying tropical forests, okay, and really using a lot of water, putting a lot of fertilizer and nitrogen into the environment, a topic that I'm going to come back to very soon. So we are changing the environment so much that we are even modifying the geological records, okay? So if an alien come to Earth, maybe, like a few, like right now, and they look at the long historical records of the geology, okay, they would see that we are dramatically changing the geological records for the past 150 years. We even call ourselves, or we define a new geological era called the Anthropocene now. All right, as distinct from the Holocene that you may have learned from your geography lesson. And into the future, we are definitely not getting better, right? And we will even have put more, people into the world, needing much more food, okay? And we even need to double our food production in order to provide for the increasing populations, and really having a lot of driving water demand as well. So now the situation is kind of like, okay, we're in like a relatively well-off society where we are benefiting from a lot of the science and technology, but at the same time, a lot of other people in relatively poor world, they're actually suffering more and more from such kind of environmental disasters. And the concept of planetary health is really about how when we damage the planet, ultimately, we are actually damaging our health. Okay, it's kind of compromising or kind of like compensating for the advancement in biomedical science that we have had. Okay, because on the one hand, we are improving health, and on the other hand, we are damaging people's health as well by polluting the environment. So climate change is predicted to actually cause a lot more death in the future. We're causing a great loss of biodiversity, basically depleting for instance, the medical resources that we can actually extract from the biosphere. And a lot more people are going to be undernutrition in the future because we cannot really keep up the pace to grow our food. And water use, soil degradation are all causing a lot of significant damage to people's health as well. So I guess my idea here, or many people's emerging idea, is that to safeguard human health, actually, we need to maintain the health of the planet in which we depend on. So, of course, there are a lot of solutions, and a lot of these kind of solutions I'm not even going to talk about. They're all about, many of them are about policy making, better governance, and perhaps like community work and so on and so forth. But here I would like to emphasize science and technology. On the one hand, may be what's driving the environmental, degradation, but on the other hand, they have high potential to actually, so to speak, save the world as well, as long as the sustainability thinking is in the core of scientific innovation. And here I'm going to sort of like suggest how, in the remaining maybe 5 minutes or so, suggest how scientists and engineers may help to save our planet. So on the one hand, definitely we need to figure out what is really going on in a very complex Earth system. A lot of the environmental problems are really a cascade of issues that are not isolated from each other. And thus, we need to really understand, the chemistry, the physics, and the biology of all of these systems in the Earth, and at the same time, working together with engineers to really come up with solutions to solve our food, water, energy, and human health crisis that are coming in our age. So in the remaining time, I'd just like to highlight some research that are done locally here by my colleague and I together. So this is a framework that I'm going to use to sort of maybe, due to the time limit, I will come back to this. I'll first give an example of what local researchers have done. So this is my colleague, Lam Honming, okay? Honming Lam, who is actually one of the most famous scientists in Hong Kong. He's even featured in one of our sort of like a TV series of our scientists. So what has he done? His team has been painstakingly looking at the genomes of soybean, all right? Soybean turns out to be one of the crops that may hold the potential of solving a lot of environmental issues, it turns out. And he looks into the genomes of soybean and really try to figure out what kind of drought-tolerant or stress-tolerant genes there may be in soybeans and try to isolate them, breed them in a natural way, all right? And also to practice growing them in the field as well. So through a lot of painstaking work, actually right now, he has bred a lot of drought tolerance, salt tolerance, and heat tolerance soybeans that can actually be grown in very dry places that are prone to climate change. So these kind of technology can really be used to help solve the food security crisis, because if our world is getting warmer and some places are getting drier, such kind of crops can actually hold the potential of still supplying our food. And there are also other aspects of soybean that are good, okay? Soybean is a nitrogen fixer, which means that it can absorb or create its own nitrogen and provide that nitrogen for other crops as well. So one of the questions that Honming has asked is, okay, if we want to grow soybean, okay, on a larger scale, what are exactly the larger benefits or environmental benefits that can be done? Because, being an experimental scientist, they grow the beans and then they claim that this is good for the environment, but we don't really know unless we can have some form to have an experiment on the environment. But of course, we do not do experiments on the environment because there's no control setup where we can compare, the experimental setup to. So we talk together. I'm a computational scientist, so I'm exactly the kind of person who can ask questions like, if we grow soybean in a larger area, okay, or replacing or using intercropping in order to maybe grow soybean alongside other crops in order to reduce fertilizer use, to reap the benefit of nitrogen provided by soybean, for instance, what are exactly the environmental benefits, okay? So we do this computational study which is a social case for how we can scale up small-scale studies to large-scale impacts. And this is what we found. It turns out that, using the best knowledge that we have and all the computer modeling tools that we have, we can really see that if we try to grow soybean, okay, alongside other crops, in the whole of China, all right, which are dominated by monoculture right now, all right, which is very bad for the environment, we can greatly reduce the amount of fertilizer that we use, okay? Fertilizer is hugely overly used in China right now, causing so much environmental problems. But if we, kind of rely on soybean and reducing ammonia emission, there can actually be a benefit for the environment, not only because it reduces greenhouse gas emission, but also, the PM 2.5 problem that has been afflicting China can also be partly sort of alleviated, okay, through our computer modeling network. We continue to do, cost and benefit analysis together with social scientists. We can really see that the yield benefit, the saved fertilizer, the saved health costs because we reduce air pollution can all sort of like overwhelm the increased cost of doing intercropping. All right, so this is kind of like a showcase research saying these pieces of information are actually really important because such kind of large-scale analysis are needed for the policymakers to really value what such kind of technology can do, what benefits it can bring on a larger scale. Because a lot of scientists can be, you know, oh, okay, we are inventing this and that and with a lot of potential, but they also need like more evidence showing, okay, so what can such kind of technology do on a larger scale in order to convince policymakers to perhaps embark on more sort of implementation of such kind of technology. So I'm going to skip all of these. I'm sorry about that, but okay, hold on. Okay, so here, to conclude, I would like to invite maybe a lot of scientists here to think about how we can work together to perhaps address some of the most important environmental issues like pollution, climate change, soil degradation that we are facing. Indeed, all of you can play a part. The experimental scientists, the field scientists, and the engineers can all come up with, you know, the physics, chemistry, and biology, and also the technology, or the technology that can potentially be used to perhaps address environmental issues, and at the same time to really look into the mechanisms that are driving or that are controlling environmental processes. And we, as a computational scientists, we really require your data and inputs and your scientific understanding in order to do our sort of a computer simulation. So we, computational scientists, usually use big, you know, high performance, you know, supercomputers, so to speak, okay? Supercomputers incorporating everything that you guys tell us, okay, into our model, trying to run it and produce simulated outputs and also projections for the future, which are really needed for policymaking. For instance, the seasonal forecast of next year's crop yield, rainfall, are very important for farmers to plan when and how and what kind of strains of crops they need to grow in order to sustain their livelihood and also the yield next year. At the same time, we also need the climate scientists to tell us how much, you know, sea level rise there will be in a certain city like Hong Kong that civil engineers actually have to take into account when they build their sewage system, so on and so forth. So such kind of projections are extremely important, but all of them would not be possible without the experimental and field scientists that rely heavily on. And one last point though, with the increasing amount of, you know, data that are available out there because of satellite and other sources, there are a lot of data to really explore. Machine learning and statistical methods and machine learning and artificial intelligence can really help us incorporate the amount of data that we have to really improve the scientific understanding, improve our numerical models such that we can make projections that are more reliable, that policymakers and social work people who work on economy and policy can really use to make a better policy for the future. So I would just like to end by inviting all of you to maybe think about how you can also take a part in ensuring a sustainable planet. Thank you very much.